Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. David Gouthro back here with another episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Bob Willard. Welcome, Bob.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
So just to set a little more context here, Bob and I worked together, it was probably pretty close to 30 years ago when Bob was at IBM and I was working with a consulting group where we were helping them develop their leadership development programs. And then after Bob left IBM, he just dove feet first into the whole issue of sustainability. And today we'd like to chat just a little bit about the climate crisis. And, you know, we hear a lot about it, but what could we be doing about it? And Bob, this is a particular passion of yours. So maybe you could just say a little bit about why it's so important to you.
Sure. And it wasn't always important to me. I should acknowledge that I'm actually a latecomer to the sustainability issues. When I was in IBM, when you and I connected, I was wonderfully oblivious to a lot of the issues that are getting more and more attention these days. But at that time, I was just having a good time at IBM and assuming that everybody else was doing the right thing to look after us. And a couple of things happened in the community where I was living, and I started to realize that the people that I thought were looking after us maybe weren't looking after us the way I thought they should. So I decided to invest a little bit more in trying to engage the business community in helping with issues that I didn't think governments could solve on their own. They needed business to be more involved. So the business case for doing that was something that I focused on in my master's degree, and then later on in a doctorate as well. So I've written a couple of books on it about sustainability in general and why it's relevant to business. In the meantime, the climate crisis has been getting more and more problematic. It's becoming more and more of an emergency, and yet the efforts by government, by business, by all of us to do our bit to try to fix that is not as aggressive, as urgent as it should be. So as a father and a grandfather, this is one of those things where the more you know, the more you hope that you didn't know or wish that you didn't know. So I am acutely aware that climate crisis is not going to get solved on its own, and we're running out of runway on the solutions. So I have sort of cranked up my own personal passion about increasing our actions to combat climate change, as well as increase the sense of urgency in all of the players involved so that they stop putting it off and they understand that this is something which not only has a 2050 deadline, it has a next year deadline. So that's where my passion comes from with kids and three grandsons. This is personal. And I don't think it's at all acceptable that the powers that be, either in the business community or in the government, are not doing enough. So a lot of what I try to do is to help them do more.
So, Bob, I know you're very personally committed to this, and I think you were saying the other day that you're one of the first organizations or people that met the net zero criteria for Canada. So, you know, it's one thing to do it yourself, but, you know, how do you get other people to do it? And more talk isn't doing it. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I was driving up to Salmon Arm to do a workshop with a credit union client. And I was listening to a tape, I think it was called We Need a Better Crisis. And it was about the climate. I'm listening to this as I'm driving a car that's using gas to get it up there. And I'm driving alongside a pipeline that's being put in to carry oil. And just, you know, the irony of it, was unbelievable. And how do you get people to move beyond their desire to not have to be uncomfortable, to embrace some of this? And even I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but there's a meeting this evening for the council here in West Van, and there's a group called Positive Voices. That's not a political organization. It's about let's do things that are good for everyone. And they're encouraging people to send a note to council to approve in their budget the 0.5% that was going to be focused on climate change. And, I sent a note to council and said 0.5%. This is such a no-brainer that it should be more than that for our future. But people are concerned about today and they're not thinking about tomorrow. They're not thinking about their kids like you are. They're not thinking about their grandkids. So what is it going to take to get people to not just agree, yes, there's a climate crisis, but also be willing to do what's required to change it? That might require them to change something they're already very, very familiar and comfortable with.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. There are different reasons that we do things, either as individuals or as organizations. In my case, I just decided to give it a shot and reduce my greenhouse gases from the high point of about 26 metric tons a year down to 0.1 metric tons a year. I just wanted to road test all of the advice that I was giving to others and make damn sure that it was going to work. And it did. So I stopped flying. I got an electric car. I use bullfrog power. You just decide you're going to do it and you do it. Easy to do at an individual level. And then the question comes up is, what difference is that going to make? I'm just one guy, right? We're all one household in Canada. And Canada's contribution to the greenhouse gases is diddly squat. It's about 2%. So you start to get overwhelmed by how daunting this is and how you can pull various levers to try to change that. So I think we need what are normally called market forces to cause the changes that we so desperately need and urgently need. So specifically, there are three market forces that I think we need to engage in this. One is the lending power of financial institutions so that they provide what are called sustainability linked loans, where they give a special rate or a better rate or a little forgiveness on the administration fees when they're giving out loans to businesses if the business is ahead of the curve on sustainability issues, especially climate change. That'd be kind of good. So if you heard that your bank was going to give you a few basis points off the rate they're going to charge on a loan, if you score well on a particular questionnaire about how engaged you are in this might encourage you, incent you, motivate you to get your act together and do more than you were intending before. Why? Because you are going to get a break on the rate on your loan. Money. The second reason is that if your investors are looking for so-called sustainable investments, then they're going to be looking for companies that are getting their act together on a number of issues: waste, plastics, water, greenhouse gases, the way they treat their employees, the way they give back to the community, all this sustainability kinds of things. So they could also start to focus their investment activities into companies that are doing the right thing so that those companies can do more of the right thing. That's the second one. The third one, and the horse that I'm riding these days, is the buying power, the procurement power of governments and organizations. So if a big customer asks you, how's it going on your greenhouse gas reduction efforts there? And you say, I care about them. They said, well, will you please answer this questionnaire? I'd like to understand how you're reducing your own greenhouse gases and the greenhouse gases coming from indirect sources as well that you are causing, because we are going to start giving a lot of weight in our bid appraisals, a lot of points to organizations that are ahead on this. So fill out this questionnaire, and we will give you preferential treatment. It'll put you ahead of your competitors if you're doing better than them on reducing your greenhouse gases. The incentive there is revenue as opposed to capital with a bank. But that's a huge motivator. I mean, when I was in IBM and I was responding to RFPs, requests for a proposal, from big accounts, and at one time I was the account executive on the Alberta government account. And when they sent us an RFP, we always took a look at all of the things they were looking for, the product type things and the company type things, supplier type things, and how many points were associated with those things. And we, of course, paid the most attention to the things that had the most points. So if we assign a lot of points to how invested the company is, the supplier is, in reducing their greenhouse gases in line with science-based targets, all of a sudden this matters. It matters because it affects their ability to make money, to earn revenue, income on this RFP, to win the bid. So that's what I'm encouraging the federal government, municipal governments, provincial governments to do. But it's not only governments. All corporations should also be asking that as well. And more companies are starting to pay attention to that as well. So I'm trying to use, coming back to what I said before, market forces to cause people to pay more attention to and act on this issue and reduce their greenhouse gases. Not because they think it's the right thing to do, but because they're going to make more money.
So, I look at the complexity of all of this, and I think when shareholders come into play, for example, so I've got a company, a client that is trying to move heavily towards electrification. I'm just thinking about the whole supply chain, and as you start to insist that each part of your supply chain reduces its greyhound gases. That's another issue. Is buses. I mean, they throw
another dog in a race.
But in their attempt to do that, sometimes it means that their ultimate cost of product or service is higher than a competitor's who isn't insisting on those sorts of things. And then you get the complexity of the shareholders that say, yeah, this greenhouse, all this kind of stuff is good, but we want to make more money. And I think sometimes to be responsible, it ends up, at least from one perspective, it costs you a little bit more to do business that way. So you have to have people that are convinced that this is the right thing to do for their kids and their grandkids as well, until things start to even out. And all players are on the same level playing field of really being responsible to our climate, short-term and long-term.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. But in the meantime, let's suppose that the government of Canada decided to implement what I'm calling net zero procurement, which means they're getting the best value for their money, not necessarily the lowest price, the best value for their money by buying or purchasing the lowest carbon goods and services from companies who are most committed to reducing their greenhouse gases in line with science-based targets. Let's suppose that, let's just think about that. So the government sends out this RFP and they ask for a whole lot of information, not the least of which is...
Sorry, Bob, I'm going to stop you for just a sec because not everyone listening may know what an RFP is. So it's request for a proposal.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this is how governments decide how they are going to fairly assess the opportunities for people to sell them goods. So they send out a request for a proposal where the supplier has an opportunity to describe all the features and benefits of its products and how good they are as a company to deal with so that they can hopefully win the bid. And when a request for a proposal comes out, usually the requester, the customer, assigns a particular amount of weight to each of the criteria that are stipulated in the RFP. And that's what drives the behavior of the supplier. There was one year where the government of Alberta, when I was their supplier in IBM, sent out an RFP and they asked, would you please describe how much you are contributing to the economy of Alberta? I thought, really? I mean, what's that got to do with the computer system I'm trying to sell you? But they wanted to know that so that they were dealing with customers, with suppliers who were invested in helping Alberta as a province be successful. So I put together the IBM in Alberta story, and it was fantastic, actually, because we did have a lot of presence in the Alberta, a lot of employees, a lot of real estate, a lot of customers. So I put together this story that said, man, we are contributing directly and indirectly an incredible amount. And here's what that incredible amount is to the government of Alberta and to the economy of Alberta. We won the bid. The point of this is I would never have bothered putting that story together if it hadn't been asked for in the RFP. So the points that are associated with these things, the weight of these criteria in the request for a proposal drives behavior in the suppliers. And that's what I'm asking the government to do. They're already doing it with large suppliers, by the way. So companies that do more than $25 million worth of business with the feds each year are now required to commit to reducing their greenhouse gases to zero by 2050 and halfway there by 2030. So this, if you're a large supplier and you don't do that, you don't get to be a supplier anymore. Pretty straightforward. It's binary. So I'm saying not just large suppliers, let's do it for small and medium-sized suppliers, but let's not make it quite so binary. Let's just ask them how they're doing on it and give them points if they're doing better than their competitors. So it's a different approach, a little softer approach initially. By the way, they are psyching themselves up to require companies to make those kinds of disclosures. But and that's true not only for the feds, but it's true for municipalities. There are 600 municipalities in Canada that have declared the climate crisis as an emergency, and they're going after this as well. So a lot of action happening at the local level, and I think the timing is right, and we can do this. So let me just step back a little further and say, let's suppose we pull it off. Let's suppose we get every government in Canada, federal, provincial, municipal government in Canada, asking their suppliers, and many of them will be common suppliers for the three different levels of government, to clean up their act on greenhouse gases and commit to reducing them to zero by 2050. Let's suppose we pulled that off. As I said before, Canada is only 2% of the emissions going into the atmosphere, but our supply chains reach outside of Canada, into China, into Europe, into the US. So the reach of all of this starts to pick up momentum. And let's suppose Canada goes to the next COP, the Conference of the Parties that happens each year, where all of the governments get together and talk about how serious they are about climate change. They've been doing this for 28 years, and it hasn't had, unfortunately, the kind of result that we'd like. But let's suppose Canada goes there and say, hey, we've got this fantastic system. It's this little system that allows us to do this. We got the questionnaire, we got the appraisal template and all that kind of stuff. Let's put it into the agreement for COP28 that all 191 countries that are signatories to this thing agree that they're going to use this. And we give it to them for free. Translated into whatever language and so on. We get the whole world using net zero procurement. That's $9 trillion of buying power that we unleash on this issue. In Canada, we've got between 20 and $30 billion worth of buying power. It's about 220, if you include all of them. At the federal level, it's 20 to 30, but they include the provinces and the municipalities. It gets into 200 to $300 billion. A lot of buying power. So what we want to do is unleash that onto the business community, not only in Canada, but worldwide, so that we incent businesses to join this race to net zero before it's too late. Because this is not a friggin' game. This is really, really serious, but we need to incent them to do that. So when you were saying before, yeah, but they're trying to recover from COVID and they're just trying to survive. I mean, this is going to be an expensive kind of thing. Relative to what? Relative to what? The risks from climate change on the business community are horrendous. Horrendous. It can wipe them out. In fact, the World Economic Forum puts it at the highest of all of the 30 to 40 things that they look at that are risks to the economies of the world. Climate change is at the top of the list. Climate change is at the top of the list. So this is this is an economic issue. It's a financial issue. It's a business issue. It's personal.
So I love that as a vision, Bob. I absolutely love it. And I think one of the pieces that needs to be put in place, I'm not sure how you do it, is around accountability. Because I can say, yes, our company is agrees with what we want to have done by 2040, 2050. But how does that get measured? Like, how is a company held accountable by to that? And it seems to me, if you get a contract, it should also have a clause in it that says, and if you don't, this contract will be terminated. Right.
Okay,
So there's some teeth in it.
Absolutely. So let me tell you the ways in which the process that I'm encouraging purchasers to follow would address that. You're absolutely right. The liberty that companies take with the truth when they're reporting on this stuff is very disappointing. So the first thing in the survey, it says, are your answers signed off on by the chief financial officer? Not the CFO, not the CEO, the CFO. They understand accounting. They understand numbers. So did they sign off on this? And what's their name? And how do we get in contact with them just to kind of check on that? That's number one. Number two, for all of the answers, we ask them, would you please give us a URL for where we can find publicly available backup to your statement here. So publicly available, just give us the URL. Just want to check that. Thirdly, if it turns out, when we add up all of your score at the end, if it turns out that your CFO has not signed off on this, we're going to reduce your score by 10%. So those are the first three things. Then let's suppose with all of that, you win the bid. Part of the terms and conditions in the bid is that we have this verified, you have your answers verified by a third party. So that's one part of it. And the other part of the terms and conditions is that, by the way, we are going to hold your feet to the fire on any commitments that you made in that survey about what you're going to do next. Because if you don't do those things next, you lose the bid.
Lose the bid or lose the contract?
Lose the contract. We will break the contract with you if you don't meet that. And by the way, if you do, here's a little bonus. We'll pay you sooner or whatever. Something that sweetens the carrots and sticks in the terms and conditions. And I've got about 6 or 7 different T's and C's, the terms and conditions that you might want to put in there. Like make sure that your CEO's remuneration is somehow tied to how well you are doing on these things. There's a lot of evidence that technique definitely gets the attention of not only the CEO, but the entire company. So you're absolutely right. The verification, the assurance, the authenticity of all of this is really, really important. And we need to make damn sure that we have teeth in this to make this a serious commitment by companies.
So another thing that occurs to me is that the contracts have to be a fairly substantial size for someone to be willing to put the effort into that. And the reason that I say that is that sometimes I get asked to do an RFP, and to fill that RFP in would take me as long or longer than the actual event that the RFP is for. Right? It's a half day planning session, and you want me to put how much effort? Right? It's crazy. So there's got to be something that's reasonable, right?
Well, absolutely. And in fact, a lot of the questionnaires there's an organization that used to be called the Carbon Disclosure Project, and now they just use CDP. as their acronym because they're talking not only about carbon, but water and forests as well. So it's just CDP. They've got a fantastic questionnaires. The UN has something called the Race to Zero, and they've got great questionnaires. The Net Zero Challenge that you mentioned, I've been a part of with the Canadian government, they've got really good questionnaires as well. But they're all intended for large companies. So what I've done is I've taken all of their questions and taken a look at what's in common with all of them and asked a very reasonable, no more than 20 questions, no more than 20 questions. In fact, another way of looking at it is more like 5 to 7 questions because I only ask, they're multiple choice questions. They're very simple. It would take you 15 minutes max because you either know the answer or you don't. So you either check it or you don't. And it's definitely intended for small and medium-sized enterprises. As you know, most of the companies in Canada are small and medium-sized. They're only, the way we rate that in Canada is if you're 500 employees or more, you're a large, and only 0.2% of the companies in Canada are large, 0.2. So 99.8% of the companies in Canada are 500 employees or less. You drop it down to 100 employees or less, which is the definition of small, that's 98.1. So most of them can't spell sustainability, let alone pronounce greenhouse gas. So we need to make allowances for that and ask very simple yes or no type questions. Otherwise, they're going to be turned off from the opportunity. But if it's a big customer, if it was a big customer asking you to do this, David, you would probably invest the time. So that's why we're asking companies to begin with to go after their big suppliers, and then we'll work through the rest of them later.
So, Bob, so that's great. I'm hoping some of the things you're talking about can be put in the program notes because, I think to be able to direct people to those as some additional resources, especially given the urgency of this topic, would be really helpful. Just, I think when people think about climate change and things like that, they usually think about carbonization and things like that. But it seems to me that there's other pieces that don't get as much attention that are still really important, like water, and not just consumption of water, but quality of water. I mean, are there some other things that people should be thinking broader about when we're thinking about climate change and what they could do as an individual?
Yeah, climate change touches everything. It touches water, too much of it or too little of it. It touches a lot of the biodiversity issues as well, which are starting to catch up with us. It touches a lot of the social and health issues as well, directly or indirectly. It's at the hub of a whole bunch of issues. And that's why, from my perspective, it's a high leverage opportunity. If we can address that, then we are almost by definition getting the co-benefits of addressing that with other issues that are also pressing. So it's not the only one, but I think if we can start to get legitimacy around doing something about that, we can build on that and get legitimacy on doing something about these other issues, the plastic waste issue, diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, the slave labor, child labor issues, all of those issues, which are getting more and more attention. I'm not trumpeting the greenhouse gas reduction thing at the exclusion of all of those things. I'm just saying we need to prioritize it, at least initially, to do something about it, because that is the most urgent threat, frankly, to human civilization, as you and I know it. This is not it's serious.
There's a friend of mine, performing arts, name is Janice Stanfield. One of her songs, and I'm going to misquote this, but is that you can't do all the world needs, but the world needs all that you can do. Right. And so how do you make it possible? I think the need or the opportunity is to make it possible for each person to see how a tiny this difference that they can make can be magnified. And there used to be a book, I'm not sure if it's still in print, it was called Change the World for $5. And the book costs $5. But each page was a single thing that someone could do to make the world better. So, for example, turn your thermostat down 1 or 2 degrees. You wouldn't even notice it. time your showers and reduce the time of your shower by 20%. But things that you hardly would not notice, it wouldn't increase any discomfort whatsoever, but you could be doing something. And if there was a whole list of things like that, I think it'd be much easier for an individual that's not part of any organization so to start doing their part, in spite of the fact that it may not be measurable, but it's still making a difference.
The biggest value of all of that is the mindset that it encourages, the mindset of personal accountability for what you're doing and the ripple effect of what you're doing. That's good. The danger is that you think it's enough.
Yeah.
And we all have to do our part, but there's a real danger that if you don't use a drinking straw when you're having a drink, that you're going to save the world. I remember walking out of a movie one time, a 3D movie, where the goggles were being asked to be deposited into a container so they could reuse the goggles. And on the label on it said, "Save the world, recycle your goggles." And I thought, really? Really? I mean, it just gives saving the world a bad name. So of course, we need to encourage behaviors, but we also have to help people understand that it's not enough just to take it personally. It's more important that you start to help others do that as well and become an agent of change through organizations, through others, and so on. But to quietly do it as a hermit, it's you'll die a little happier maybe. But I think we really have to crank up our personal leverage opportunities and make change happen at a scale that we've never dreamed possible.
So again, I think about what are some ways to do that make it simpler for people to do it. So some of the ones that occur to me are, here's form a club or an interest group in your company that's supporting this. Here's a way to do it. Here's a template so you can do that. Here are some letters that you can send to your MP, to your MPP, but tailor it a little bit, but so it makes it easy for people to start to apply that leverage, and how to crank it up. So start small, but build big. And and I think a lot of it is building communities around these kinds of things. And that community can be in an actual community, a geographic community, but can be in an organization. It can be in a province. It can be in a country. But to have more leverage. And sometimes that leverage, for some strange reason, it seems to be greater around the time when there's going to be an election. Call me crazy. Maybe that's just an observation.
I'm in violent agreement with you on this thing. At one time, I was part of the Durham region. I'm in Durham, Ontario, the region in Ontario near Toronto. The Durham region had a roundtable on climate change. I was a citizen member of that. There were politicians, had business people, had academics on it. And we were trying to make sure that the region as a region reduced its carbon footprint. I'm now on the Whitby Sustainability Advisory Council, which is, I live in Whitby, Ontario. And this is the group of citizens that are working with the sustainability people in Whitby. And I want to work with their procurement people as well to try to road test some of these ideas with the community and with businesses in the community. So you're absolutely right. We need to take whatever we're doing and leverage the heck out of it. Road test it, make sure that what we're doing is being done in a way that engages others as opposed to just ticks them off, and build this momentum. That's as change agents, and this, you taught me all of this stuff in leadership development. That's the trick, is to engage others in it. Not so much that you're doing it yourself, but you engage others in it. And that's the dynamic that we are, as change agents, unfortunately not very good at.
I think the one mindset that there's no room for at all is that of impotence, that there's nothing that I can do that's going to be significant, so I'll do nothing. And I think the reality is everyone can do something, and whatever they're doing, they could do even more of. I think it's trying to create that mindset in everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Otherwise, you just give up and, you keep doing what you were always doing, which is contributing to the problem. So I totally agree with you. I have the luxury of having the time and the competency to be able to leverage things a little bit more than maybe some others. And I don't want to squander that. I think it's really dependent on me using all of the stuff that I'm good at in a way that I never dreamed that I'd need to. But this is really serious, and it's time to give it a shot.
Well, and I really do hope that we'll be able to put a lot of your resources, Bob, in the program notes. I know that one of the things that you do and keep updated is an incredible resource of presentations around all of this science-based information that you go through any of this, and it makes tremendous sense to do something and makes no sense to do nothing. Right. And if we can let people know how they can get a hold of those, that would be fabulous. So I would like to thank you so much for such an important conversation. It's not just for today, it's for tomorrow, it's for 10 years from now, it's for 100 years from now, right? It's not going to go away. It's not like, let's just wait until the bell curve shifts and no, we're not concerned about the environment and the climate anymore. It's not going to happen as much as you might hope it would. So you don't have to change as an individual. So I would like to thank you very much for being with us here today, Bob, and that for all the work that you've been doing selflessly to, well, it's not overstating it, to save our planet. Oh, that's the ultimate objective, right? We got to have a planet to live on. Otherwise, where are you going to go? So this is David Gouthro on Discover Fresh Perspectives with Bob Willard. Can't wait until the next episode to listen to. Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.